Welcome to this edition of the Million Dollar Mastermind podcast. This is where we pick the brains of high achievers from all walks of life and get their hard-earned, real-world insights on winning. I'm your host, Larry Weidel. We're going to have some fun this afternoon talking with Robert Cornish. Hello, Robert.
Hey there.
How are you doing this afternoon, and where are you?
Doing very well, just a little bit north of Seattle, in the office here in Linwood, Washington.
Okay.
Yep.
Your background, everything. I'm intrigued with your book. I'm intrigued with your accomplishments. And the thing that we get into on this podcast is how people operate, what they've learned about what works and what doesn't work, and you got to make choices in life. You're out there, you become an adult, and that's what you say, like, if it's going to be, it's up to me. I got to make a choice, and then I got to live with it.
Yep.
And if I don't like it, then I got to change it.
Yep.
And then you learn how to do that in the beginning, and you flounder around. But the floundering is very useful because you're learning to be assertive. You're learning what doesn't work. You're learning to how much pressure to put on when you need to be assertive and, not turn into a butthole, and run everybody off.
Yeah.
You got to you can't run everybody off all the time and have a team. So, you learn these things while you're floundering around. But then what I've noticed, I don't know if you've noticed this, but I noticed it first, Robert, in sales and doing presentations. Like, you learn how to present something. You get the facts and cover it, and disturb. And then, here's a solution and overcoming the objections as you go through the process. But what I found was that in the beginning, it was a matter of learning to memorize it, like you're an actor or something. But as you got into the flow of prospecting, all of a sudden, words started coming out of my mouth. And I noticed with other people, same thing happens in speaking. Yeah. Like, words come out of your mouth, illustrations pop into your head that are just like, frigging brilliant. It's like, where did that come from? Well, it comes from your subconscious and everything. It kind of shows you actually have a pretty powerful brain up there on your shoulders if you challenge it to go forward. Put it in an uncomfortable situation, make it do things, and then all of a sudden, it starts coming up with stuff. And what I call that's really the magic of big leaders and high achievers. The magic that only came because they put themselves out on the firing line. They did the repetitions, and then they got insights that came from, inside them about what they're doing. And this is what makes, the high achievers unique, like yourself. Like when you write a book, you've got things to offer that other people don't have to offer, which you learned by doing what you had set out for yourself to do, So that's why I've got one of the most fun jobs in the world of talking to high achievers.
Yeah.
And being operated in that world, because it's like you're just delving. It's like a license to go and look at the magic, and where the magic came from. And those insights that are work for you. And you're really not interested in arguing anything about it because it works. It's just like you've proven to yourself. So, as where did you would you say, got you started on your road? Let's just tell people your current company, just kind of a quick overview. Correct me on these things you want. Has been listed one of the fastest growing companies in your state, Washington, but also all over the United States. In Inc. 5000 from 2013 to 17, Silicon Valley fastest growing. I don't know what that 54 times. What is that? Silicon Valley. What is that?
It was the Silicon Valley Fast 50. It was the Fast 50 list, and we made that 4 times, and then we made the Inc. 5000 list 5 times. And but yeah,
or 360.
Yep.
And so you got a book that came from that hopefully we're going to talk about. But where did this, before you even get started, you run a company now. You've got the Richter Group of Companies.
Yep.
That's what got kicked off in 2013. But before that, where did you come from?
So
where did you say you came from?
Yeah, I mean, so Richter actually started in 2008, and then I started Richter Group of Companies, which is the holding company. But I've been doing this for 15 years, and for me, I mean, I've really always been an entrepreneur, to be honest. I mean, even when I was a little kid, I was always thinking about ideas. And even to my friends, I told them I never wanted to work for someone really. And that wasn't really my path. I always wanted to own a company. I didn't really know the term entrepreneur, but I definitely knew that I wanted to have my own company. And what that company was kind of evolved over the years. So sometimes I had different ideas of what that might be, but that was always a constant for me was I knew that when I got out of school, I was going to start a company. And that is what I ended up doing. And so I've been an entrepreneur for, 20 years, about 20 years, and had various different companies, but I've been running Richter for the last 15 years. So, it's really always been the thing that I've studied and read and been doing and been around and kind of immersed myself in,
As we're thinking about doing well and passing on what we learned to the generations coming behind us, which is the real rewarding part of having achieved success, is being able to pass it on, inside and outside your own family and your own company. But you wonder what, it's the nature and nurture situation. You wonder, like, here you are, a young guy, and you've got this thought in your head, like sometimes it just comes, it's like divinely planted in you. And, you got the kid in New York City up on living on the east side in a luxury apartment. He wants to be a rodeo rider. He wants to ride Broncos for his career, but then you have a little girl out in the middle of Wyoming. No one's ever seen a ballet, and she wants to be a ballerina. And so sometimes it's planted like that. A lot of times it's nurtured. Where do you think you got that idea? Like, I want to be my own boss. That's the path for me. Where do you think it came from?
I think it's just who I am, to be honest.
Yeah.
I mean, I really think when I look back to even being a kid, even the choices I make. I played competitive hockey and I was a goalie, and I often think that the goalie is kind of the entrepreneur position of that.
Right.
Because you see the whole ice, you can see the plays, the players come to you, you kind of help lead the team, and you could steer the team to some degree. So I think there's I was compelled towards leadership. I was compelled towards ideation, like ideas and doing things and being able to sort of mold things to what I want. I've never had a shortage of ideas. And I like to sort of be able to build the thing that I want to build. I think it's great when people can work for great organizations and contribute to that motion. But I think that's, there's an element that if you really listen to yourself, you tend to know who you are and what you're interested in. And for me, this is who I am and what I'm interested in. And so when I pursue the things that I have a strong interest in, it makes it a lot easier. If you pursue something where it's just to make money or to make a buck, it makes it very difficult to push through the struggles and the various things you're doing. But if you're a little bit more aligned, I would say, with who you actually are, and you can kind of lean into that, I think you're going to do a lot better.
Yeah, and it's a matter of reaching the point where you think about these things. Some people don't think about it till they're in their 50s. They've just been doing what they were doing and following the rat path. And but the sooner you can start, like, who am I? What do I want? And a lot of that, Robert, I don't know if you'll agree with it, but a lot of that comes from what you're interested in. You take 100 people and show them 100 different things. They're not all, and if you're to put some kind of electrodes on them to see what their brain, gets fired up about, they're not all going to. They're probably going to have almost 100 different things they get fired up about, but you can't control that response. I used to have go in meetings, and just for fun, I would put up things I'd done with the family and places we've been. And you have big homes, or then sometimes you just throw things in like a fancy motorcycle or, race cars or some of the big resorts around the world. And you see the audience, you just flash the picture up there. And you go, ooh, the involuntary, comes from
Yeah.
God is like, wow, ooh, it's like, whatever you oohed for. What I found is people tend to put you down when you're materialistic, you're selfish, you don't understand, things don't bring you happiness, But the one thing that going after something that, in our company, one of the greatest early explosions we had was a guy came in, didn't even want to do this full time, but he wanted a Winnebago. He wanted a dadgum Winnebago. And so he wanted to come in, do this enough on the side to where he could get a Winnebago. Never bought the Winnebago. They wound up making hundreds of thousands of dollars, moving to another state, building a huge organization. But what lit his fire was he wanted something and he was interested in something. And to me, that's what, I take a kind of a different approach to where if there's something material out there that fires your butt up, if it's a home, a vacation, or it's, some kind of thing just on a guttural level of boom, go after it. And that, because the key is to unleash what's inside you. And the way you find out what kind of person you are is like, what does interest me?
Yeah.
And a lot of times the first things you're interested in is not really where you're going to wind up, but it gets you going and you learn things, because it gets you moving forward. But how did you what were the first ideas that came across your radar and you said, I'm going to give this thing a try early on? And what kind of things, which you went rolling after?
Well, I mean, I've always loved business and stocks and things like that. So when I guess the very first thing was probably stocks. I studied stocks and was trading stocks, and actually helped me launch my first company. So I actually did quite well. And then I took, I sort of built my portfolio. I studied many books. I'm an avid reader.
Yeah.
And so at the time, probably read 50 some odd books on stocks and investments and things like that. But I loved business. I loved that space. And when I was, 18, 19, I was reading all about it all the time, every day. And what do you think was fascinating to you about it? I don't know. I love companies. I love businesses. Stocks are companies, right?
Yeah, right.
And so I loved reading about these different things and like companies. That's why I like stocks. And so I would study the different companies and what are they doing, and then there would be some that maybe go IPO and things I wanted to get behind. And so I took the little money I had, and then I kept building it until I had a pretty good sum. And then I ended up taking that amount and investing it and started my first company with real estate. And we ended up doing real estate. I don't really know what I was doing necessarily, but I knew enough to start an LLC, and I knew enough to like figure it out and like get our first deal. And from there, it just kind of like, you just kind of do, and you kind of read books, and then you do, and then you learn as you go. And that was kind of how I got going.
Did you ever follow up with some of the authors who wrote these books and get to where you knew them personally, or did you find that certain authors you responded to more than others, and wound up getting some kind of relationship or something like that?
Some I have connected with some, but not necessarily from the early days stock books. But I have done that from time to time, like on LinkedIn, and connect with people, and I love reading, so I'm an avid reader, and so I have definitely connected with people that have written books. Not all of them, but some of them I have done that.
Yeah. And what kind of advantage? Because you said the stock market is a big place where it's a big casino, and no rhyme or reason. You go in and you laid a foundation of reading the books and getting yourself self-educated, I guess, before you went in too much. And that gave you an edge, because you said you were successful.
Maybe. I think also just, going back to knowing yourself.
Yeah.
I've always been good at trends. I've always loved brands since I was a little kid. I used to cut all the brands out, the logos out of off things. And I made a patch hat. I would wear a patch hat. It was like 8th grade of, Nike and all these different things.
Really?
I love brands, right? I love companies since I was a little kid. So logos and brands and that kind of stuff. So the truth is, the stock market's honestly just an extension of that to some degree. Like, I knew Coach IPO would go well at the time, or I knew, I don't know, Krispy Kreme or PayPal or the different things I was investing in. I knew those were going to go well at the time. And because I knew the brand, knew the companies, I knew this kind of stuff, and I would study the companies. And I think that you do need to know the technical aspect of trade stock, but stock is just not about, it's not just about the numbers and the different things like that, or even gambling to some degree. I think that when you understand the companies, and then you also understand humans and the sort of rational aspect of humans, because stocks sometimes do things where an analyst will think, well, this shouldn't be worth this, but humans are rational, right? So, sometimes stocks move based off of rational desires. I mean, GameStop, that's stock recently that went crazy from, people who posted it on Reddit. It's like, you can't explain that, but you can if you look at the human aspect or the human love for a brand or what they're doing. So I think there's multi points of trading stock that are interesting, and then that carry over to understanding business, right? So when you look at a business, ultimately, when you buy stock, you're buying into a company, and companies, the more you know about the company, and the more you understand and like that brand or like the company. And if you think it's undervalued from where it's currently trading, I think it's a fairly safe bet.
Thanks for listening to the Million Dollar Mastermind. If you felt there were any valuable takeaways from this episode, please take a minute and leave us a 5-star review. Your feedback is important and really helps us get the word out to a wider audience. Remember, we have a valuable webinar that is absolutely free. Register for it right now at weidelonwinning.com. Thanks for listening.